In today's video, we're diving into 5 of the creepiest, most unexplained Halloween cases ever recorded. Most people think Halloween is just about costumes and candy, a harmless holiday where we tell scary stories for fun. But what if some of those stories weren't just made up? These are not ghost stories. These are not legends. These are documented events, and every single one of them happened on or near Halloween. So stick around, because I guarantee you've never heard these stories before. In 2009, on the 28th of October, the police department in the quiet Canadian city of Windsor received one of the strangest emergency calls they'd ever gotten. A woman in her 30s, completely hysterical, was screaming on the phone, her 8-year-old son crying in the background. She kept repeating, "My husband, he disappeared. He just vanished right in front of our house." Now, usually when a call like that comes in, it's treated like a possible abduction, so officers rushed to her home immediately. But the moment they pulled up, they saw something that made all of them freeze in place. Just 10 meters away from the front door was a perfect circle burned into the ground, and inside that circle was a fire, still burning. But this wasn't an ordinary fire. It was glowing blue. Officers later said the flames were unlike anything they'd ever seen. They looked unnatural, almost chemical. But even weirder, the fire didn't seem to be spreading. It just stayed in that circle. The woman, still shaking and trying to catch her breath, tried to explain what happened. There had been a snowstorm earlier that day, and the power had gone out. To stay warm, she, her husband, and their son had to use a fireplace, but eventually they ran out of wood. So her husband volunteered to go outside and grab more from the storage shed, which was only about 20 meters away. She and her son followed him outside. They stood near the porch, cheering him on as he walked through the snow, arms full of wood, heading back toward them. It was freezing, but they were laughing, until suddenly they weren't. As her husband got about halfway back to the house, a small flash of light appeared just behind him. Not lightning, not a spark, just a faint, silent flicker. Then he was gone, like he had just blinked out of existence. No sound, no struggle, nothing. 1 second he was there, walking toward them. The next, nothing but smoke in the air where he used to be. The woman froze. Her son started screaming, and just seconds later, 4 of their neighbors, who had also been outside, came rushing over. They had seen the exact same thing. One of the neighbors shouted, "Where did he go? What happened to the man? Why is there only smoke?" At that moment, the woman realized she wasn't going crazy. She had really watched her husband vanish into thin air right in front of her, and now several people were backing her up. She collapsed on the spot and called the police. By the time they arrived, the blue fire had already appeared. Now the location where the man vanished, where the smoke had risen, is the exact spot where that burning circle now sat. Just 10 meters from the house. It wasn't paved or man-made, it was just normal land, but all the snow around it had completely melted. The rest of the yard was still covered in thick snow, except for that one spot, and even as days passed, the blue fire continued to flicker there off and on. For 15 straight days, investigators searched the area. They brought in dogs, scanners, heat sensors, everything. They even dug deep into the spot where he had disappeared. They found nothing, no trace of him, no sign of struggle, not even a shoe print left behind. It was as if he had just evaporated. And here's where things get even stranger. That circle? It's still there. Years later, it hasn't changed. No grass ever grows inside it. No snow ever settles on it. No one can explain why. The scientists who came to test the soil found nothing out of the ordinary, and to this day, nobody, not one person, has been able to explain what happened to that man. All we know for sure is this: every year, in late October, around Halloween, that blue circle sometimes starts burning again, and when it does, no one gets too close. So there's this story. Actually, it's not just a story, it's a phenomenon, one that's still happening today, and Every year, like clockwork, it makes its biggest appearance during the last days of October, right around Halloween. Now, before your mind goes there, no, I'm not talking about leopards or panthers or black jaguars. I'm talking about house cats. Only these ones. They're the size of cars. This is the mystery of the giant black cats, and for decades they've been terrifying people all over the world. They show up suddenly, they vanish just as quickly, and no one, not scientists, not hunters, not even advanced technology, has been able to explain how or why. They appear in the middle of roads, in fields, on farms, even in closed barns, and when they vanish, they leave behind no trace except for giant paw prints and, in some cases, shreds of whatever they attacked. The earliest official sighting of these creatures happened in England back in the 1960s. A well-known writer named William Cobbett mentioned it in his famous book Rural Rides. He described seeing what looked like a normal black cat, except it was massive, way bigger than any dog he'd ever seen. It jumped up into a tree like it weighed nothing at all, then vanished. When he walked over to see where it had gone, there was nothing, no sound, no trace, just silence. Fast forward to 1927, and this time it's front page news. The Daily Express, a major UK newspaper, ran a detailed article about an enormous cat that had appeared in front of a group of people and then disappeared just as quickly, right before their eyes. Again, this happened in late October, but across the world, in Australia, things were getting even weirder. On several farms where animals were kept in locked, cats the size of lions were somehow appearing inside the fences, attacking livestock, then vanishing into thin air, even though there were no exits and no damage to the enclosures. Farmers began reporting seeing these creatures, standing silently in the shadows 1 second, then lunging forward the next, killing multiple animals in a matter of seconds before they vanished again. In some cases, even the farmers themselves were attacked. They were injured, scratched, bitten, but survived. And all of this, every single year, always happened during Halloween week. After multiple reports started pouring in from all over the world, wildlife researchers launched investigations. They set traps, cameras, tracking devices, anything they could think of. But according to the experts, nothing worked. These cats were smarter than anything they'd ever encountered. They avoided every modern trap and escaped every enclosure. The only evidence they ever left behind were a few hairs, some massive paw prints, and the occasional terrifying video. In one particularly chilling case, scientists managed to recover fur left behind after the creature climbed a tree. When they tested the DNA, what they found shocked them. The results showed a genetic blend of domestic cat, tiger, cougar, and leopard. How is that even possible? One researcher, Steve Irwin, claimed to have actually filmed one of these creatures. He even captured footage of how it vanished. But mysteriously, his footage was erased. His reports disappeared. Even online, all articles and posts about his discovery were quietly wiped clean. To this day, no one knows who or what was behind that cover-up. But perhaps the most terrifying encounter happened in England to a 13-year-old boy. It was Halloween night, and like most kids, he and 5 of his friends were going door to door for candy. Everything was normal until a giant black cat jumped out from the darkness and attacked him. His friends screamed and ran for help as the creature clawed into the boy, then darted off into the night. When police arrived, they assumed it must have been some kind of wild animal. But when the boy described what attacked him, he said one thing over and over again. It wasn't a dog. It wasn't a bear. It was a giant cat. He had deep claw marks across his body, and when experts examined the wounds, their blood ran cold. The pattern matched a cat's claws, but the size, completely impossible. The only known footage that exists of one of these creatures was captured by a home security camera. It didn't show the attack, only the moment when the giant black cat leapt over a backyard fence and vanished midair. And just like that, it was gone. In 2015, in a quiet town in Denmark, A man was outside in his yard doing something millions of people do every year. He was setting up Halloween decorations. It was late October. The air was cold, and the man, who happened to be a bodybuilder, was hanging fake cobwebs on his bushes, getting the yard ready for trick-or-treaters, when suddenly something lunged at him. Out of nowhere, a giant black cat appeared and attacked him, trying to rip him apart. Now, keep in mind, this guy was no average man. He was massive, a trained fighter, someone who could normally toss a grown man across a gym if he wanted to. But when he tried to fight this creature off, he realized something terrifying. That cat's strength wasn't natural, he said later. I couldn't even defend myself. He was being overpowered by a cat. Just as the attack was escalating, his wife came running outside hearing the commotion, and the second the creature saw her, it bolted. It darted across the yard with inhuman speed, then leapt up into a tree like it weighed nothing. Now, by pure coincidence, local police were already nearby responding to another call, and they happened to arrive at the scene almost immediately. They saw it. They saw the massive black cat with their own eyes, climbing up a tree just a few yards from the house. So they surrounded it, flashlights out, weapons drawn. They began approaching the tree slowly, cautiously. But when they looked up, it was gone. Just seconds earlier, they had the thing cornered. There was nowhere for it to go. But somehow, in the time it took to take a few steps forward, it vanished. No sound, no movement, no trace. And to this day, no one has explained how. This case was so strange, so terrifying and so real that it made headlines in major newspapers. If you want proof, you can find the story in BBC's 2015 archives. In the northern city of Akita, Japan, there's an old legend that's been passed down from generation to generation since 1857, a legend tied to a single, quiet house. And unlike most ghost stories, this one doesn't fade over time. In fact, it's still happening. According to the legend, it all started with two brothers who lived in that house back in the 1800s. Everything was normal until October 31st. That night, neighbors heard something coming from the house, not just yelling or banging, but full-on chaos. Glass shattering, wood splintering, walls collapsing. The sounds were so intense that the neighbors assumed the brothers were being attacked, maybe by a gang or some kind of intruder, so they rushed over. But when they kicked the door open, what they found inside would haunt them forever. The entire house had been torn apart, smashed, crushed, and ripped to pieces. But the most disturbing part was what happened to the brothers. They were dead, but it wasn't just that they had been killed. Each of them had been fused into the walls. I'm not talking metaphorically. They were literally embedded in the walls, like their bodies had been melted and absorbed into the plaster. And here's the twist. There was no sign of a third person, no footprints, no blood trail, no weapon, no fingerprints. It looked as if the brothers had somehow destroyed their entire home, killed themselves, and then somehow merged with the walls. The community was shaken. No one could explain what they'd seen. Eventually, the brothers were buried in the garden outside the house, and to honor them, the townspeople built 2 stone statues, shaped to look just like them. Each statue was placed on top of their graves like a permanent tombstone. But that was only the beginning, because the following year, on October 31st, at the exact same time of night, neighbors once again heard those same terrifying sounds. The crashes, the walls breaking, the echoes of that original night. And it didn't stop. Every year after that, on the exact same night, Halloween, the noise would return. It was like the house was reliving the moment over and over again. And that's when people started watching more closely. Some claimed they actually saw the statues move. Not shift slightly, but literally step off their bases and walk around the garden. Others said the statues would vanish entirely for hours on Halloween night, only to reappear the next morning in the exact same position. Not moved, not knocked over, just gone, then back, like they had never left. Years passed, and the house remained abandoned, until one day, A wealthy man decided to buy the property. He didn't believe in curses. He said the location was great and the land was valuable, so the owners agreed to sell it on one condition: he could renovate or rebuild however he wanted, but he was not allowed to remove the graves or the statues in the garden. He shrugged it off. "Fine," he said, "they can stay." So he tore the old house down and built a brand new home on the land. And for a while, everything was normal. But then came October 31st. That night, just after midnight, the neighborhood was jolted awake by the sound of screaming. The entire family that had moved into the new house had been brutally killed. And what made it worse? There were no signs of forced entry, no intruder, no security footage showing anyone breaking in. Just the family, mangled, and the house, wrecked, just like in the original event. The property remained untouched for years. No one dared go near it, until 1976, when the government auctioned it off. A man from another city bought it, hoping to spend his honeymoon there. And get this, he knew the legend. He just didn't believe it. "It's just a story," he said. "A spooky tale for Halloween, nothing more." For a few days, everything was quiet. Then came Halloween night. Around 11 p.m., the man went outside to take a walk through the garden. As he passed by the graves, something caught his eye. The statues were gone. He paused, confused, thought maybe his memory was playing tricks on him. Maybe he never saw them in the first place. But then he remembered what the legend had said, that the statues only move on Halloween night. He rushed back toward the house. When he got there, the statues were suddenly back, standing in their normal positions near the graves. He shook his head. "No way," he thought. "This is in my head." But just to be sure, he went inside to tell his wife. That's when things took a turn. The house, just minutes earlier, had been warm, bright, and quiet. Now it was freezing cold and pitch black. Every light had gone out. He turned them back on and froze. The house had been completely destroyed. Furniture shattered, walls cracked, everything broken. And his wife? She was lying dead on the floor. No scream, no sound, no warning, just like the brothers. That house still stands in Akita today, still abandoned, still feared. No one, not even locals, go near it, especially not on Halloween. And for a long time, people believed the legend had finally faded, until Halloween night, 2022. That night, dozens of people reported hearing screams and destruction coming from the direction of the old property. Witnesses said it sounded like a massacre happening behind the walls of an empty home. And just like that, the legend resurfaced, as if the house was saying, "Did you forget about me?" In a quiet Brazilian neighborhood, on a festive Halloween night, a 29-year-old woman and her best friend were putting up decorations, getting the house ready for a small party. It was just after sunset. Kids were running around in costumes. Pumpkins lined doorsteps. The air smelled like candy and fireworks. The two women had just about finished decorating when the friend realized they were missing a few last-minute items. So she told her friend she'd be right back, grabbed her purse, and headed off to the market just down the street. What happened in the next few minutes would leave an entire neighborhood speechless, and scientists baffled. As the city buzzed with Halloween fun, neighbors suddenly noticed something strange. A bright, blinding light began glowing from the woman's house. Not candlelight, not party lights, something unnatural, so intense that several people thought it was an explosion. A crowd quickly gathered outside, knocking on the door, shouting her name. No answer. The light had disappeared as quickly as it appeared, and the house had gone eerily quiet. Just then, her friend returned from the store. She saw the people gathered. She saw the looks on their faces. She dropped her bags and sprinted toward the door, pounding and calling out. Still, no response. They had no choice. They kicked the door in, and what they found inside would become one of Brazil's most horrifying Halloween mysteries. The entire kitchen was scorched like it had been hit by a blast of fire, but only in very specific spots. Metal doorknobs and utensils had melted. Some glass dishes were completely liquefied. But the actual room, the walls, the ceiling, the wooden cabinets, the floor, completely untouched. In the middle of the kitchen, lying motionless on the tile, was what remained of the young woman. Her body was almost entirely turned to ash. Everything, arms, torso, legs, was gone. The only parts left were a piece of her skull, part of a hand, and a charred section of one leg. When investigators arrived, they expected to find a fire, maybe an accident with candles or appliances, but nothing made sense. There was no fire damage in the rest of the house, no fuel, no accelerant, and no source for a blaze intense enough to reduce a human body to ashes. Because here's the thing, to completely incinerate a human body the way hers was, it takes a temperature of at least 3,000 degrees Celsius. Let me put that into perspective. That's the kind of heat you'd find inside metal forging factories or industrial crematoriums, not in a kitchen. Forensics confirmed something even more terrifying. Her clothes had clearly caught fire first, but there was no fire around her, meaning something had ignited from within, a phenomenon that science has recorded, but still doesn't fully understand. It's called spontaneous human combustion. Now, this isn't fiction. It's rare, but it's real. There have been over 120 documented cases in the past 100 years. People who, for no apparent reason, suddenly burst into flames, often with no external source of ignition. In nearly all cases, the body is reduced to ash. The surroundings are untouched, and no one hears a thing. But here's the part no one talks about. Of the confirmed cases in the last 50 years, 22 of them happened on the same exact date, October 31st, Halloween. Why? Why would a scientifically unexplained phenomenon be tied to a specific day of the year? Coincidence? Mass hysteria? Or is there something about Halloween, something ancient, maybe even supernatural, that triggers it? Let me know what you think in the comments, because this case still has no answers, and it could happen again, any year, maybe even this Halloween. In the Halloween night of 2020, the world was shut down. Cities were under lockdown. People were staying home, but not everyone. A group of 11 friends, 7 guys and 4 girls, all in their 20s, decided they weren't going to let Halloween pass them by, so they packed up their gear and went camping. They chose a secluded, peaceful spot near the city of Clover, Romania, a quiet patch of land just 700 meters off the main road, nestled between giant boulders and forest. They pitched their tents, lit a fire, and spent the night singing, laughing, and goofing off, trying to enjoy what little freedom they still had. And for a while, everything felt normal, until the clock hit midnight. Halloween had officially begun. At that exact moment, a police patrol happened to be driving along the nearby main road. From where they were, they could see the glow of the campfire flickering between the rocks. It looked harmless, just a group of people camping. Still, protocol required that they log the location and report it in case there were any issues later. As the officer radioed in the GPS coordinates, everything changed. Without warning, a bolt of lightning struck the forest just a few feet from the campsite. Then another, and another. The officer stopped mid-sentence. He stared, wide-eyed, as the storm seemed to form out of nowhere. Violent winds, thunder, and lightning slamming into the same exact spot over and over again. He radioed back. "This is not normal. We're getting struck repeatedly. Same location, non-stop. This is impossible." Cars started pulling over on the road behind him, drivers getting out to watch the bizarre scene unfold. The officer ducked back inside his car for cover as lightning rained down on the forest like some kind of targeted assault. Realizing that people might be injured or worse, he immediately called for backup. Then just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The air went still, the lightning vanished, and the forest was silent. The officer wasted no time. He grabbed his flashlight and ran toward the camp, now joined by the curious onlookers who had stopped to help. They reached the clearing in under a minute, and what they found? No one was ready for it. The fire had burned out. The trees around the camp were split, shattered, or knocked down, clearly struck by the lightning. 4 tents stood in place. Inside them, nothing. No people. No blood, no signs of a struggle, but their phones were there. Their backpacks, guitars, shoes, and even their jackets, all left behind like they had just stepped away for a second. But the campers themselves, gone. At that moment, one of the officers noticed something else. The large rock formations nearby were glowing. A strange blue light was pulsing from within the stone itself. Witnesses would later say the rocks looked like they had turned into giant lanterns, spilling out so much blue light that everyone had to cover their eyes. Then the light vanished, just like that, and the rocks returned to normal. Backup arrived and began searching the area. They combed through the surrounding forest, called in search dogs, even reviewed the phones they found. On the phones were videos and selfies taken just minutes before the lightning storm began. The group had been sitting around the fire, joking and singing, laughing, and then nothing. No one has seen or heard from any of them since. As of today, those 11 young adults are still missing. No remains, no trace, no footprints leading away from the site. It's as if they were erased from existence. So, what really happened? Some people say it's just a freak storm, nothing more. Others say it's not a coincidence that this happened on October 31st, because here's where it gets eerie. Over the years, dozens of unexplained events, disappearances, attacks, sightings, combustions, all share the same one detail. They happen on Halloween. Why? Some believe it's the alignment of celestial events, stars, planets, magnetic shifts that open temporary rifts in our reality. Others believe it's the location itself, saying places with violent histories hold dark energy that sometimes opens gateways for something else to come through. Whatever the explanation, no one has answered the real question. Why Halloween? Why do these things always happen on this one night of the year? That was today's story. If you made it this far, make sure to like and share it with someone you know who loves mysteries like this. And if you think this content is worth supporting, subscribe, because Halloween's coming back around, and we've still got more stories to tell.